player comps for some of the top NFL draft prospects. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Emory Hunt. And we've got a little over 2 weeks until the 2023 NFL Draft. And as we've been doing every Tuesday on Fantasy Football Today in 5, I've got Emory Hunt here, and we're going to talk about the NFL Draft and get to know some of the prospects. And one of the things I always like to do is get some player comps because, I don't get to spend hundreds of hours diving into the film for all these players. So, player comps, obviously every player is different, but it helps steer me in the direction for some of these guys. So we'll start with two top quarterbacks on the CBS Sports prospect rankings. We'll start with CJ Stroud from Ohio State. What's the comp for him?
Well, for me, he reminds me a lot of Troy Aikman, someone that can work well within the pocket, very accurate, consistently accurate at the intermediate and deeper levels down the field. Much better athlete than Troy was, but when Troy was younger, moving within the pocket, that's what made him special. I think that's the same thing along the lines of what we're seeing from CJ Stroud.
Yeah, Stroud didn't run a ton in college, and I think that's one of the questions from a fantasy perspective about how much upside he's going to have. Can he be, even a 300-yard, 5-touchdown kind of guy, be a threat in the red zone? That's going to go a long way to determining whether he can be, a QB2 or really one of those high-end guys. What about Bryce Young from Alabama?
Bryce Young is so dynamic and you want to say explosive. I can, if you told me you wanted to compare him to Doug Flutie, if you wanted to compare him to Russell Wilson, I wouldn't argue because I think he's along that spectrum. So you have a wide range of where he can lie. So I'm going to lean more contemporary and go with Russell Wilson because he's someone you're going to design run plays for, but he's someone that can scramble, break contain, and pick up those cheap yards or two, but also do a great job in getting down the field and also protecting himself. So in that way, he is kind of like Russell Wilson.
Yeah, the protecting himself part is going to be key because, obviously Russell Wilson's on the smaller side, but I feel like he's a little thicker than Bryce Young. So that's going to be key if he does, make use of his legs, as we've seen with Russell Wilson, someone who has gotten to that 500-yard range, has been a threat in the red zone, has helped him have a really high ceiling. Let's move on to the running back position. We've talked a lot about Bijan Robinson, who projects as the top player at the position. So we'll go one spot down at the overall rankings. And Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama, what's the comp for him?
I've been on Alvin Kamara since he was at Georgia Tech. So for me, that's the comp in terms of what I see from Jahmyr Gibbs. He's explosive. He doesn't need volume to have success. And he's an elite receiver, not just your swing, screens, flares, and flats type of meets expectations running back. He's a downfield threat in the passing game.
That unlocks so much potential for fantasy. If you can be a downfield guy, because obviously, in your PPR leagues, you love those dump offs in the backfield because you get at least a point for every one of those. But once you can do that, and like Alvin Kamara, where he was getting, 90 catches a year, averaging 9 to 10 yards per catch, like we've seen Austin Eckler as well, that just unlocks so much upside where even if you're only an 8 to 10 carry guy, you can still be an RB1. So if he has that kind of upside, you love to see that. What about Devon Chain from Texas A&M?
He reminds me a lot of Ahmad Bradshaw. He's someone that people will look at him and think, oh, he's just going to get outside and try to run to the corner. Yeah, he can do that because he has elite track speed, but he runs determined in between the tackles. So for me, he's someone that I think will probably get miscast as a space guy, but really he's someone you want starting and giving him the football. So he's going to probably need a little bit more volume as opposed to the other guys that we're talking about at the position.
Which can happen. I mean, we saw last year, two guys in their first seasons, Travis Etienne and Kenneth Walker, weren't a big part of the passing game, but were still borderline RB1s last season because they got the volume and because, like you said, that big play ability can help you. You're not just picking up 4 yards every time, but you got the chance for that 40, 50-yard run every game that can, unlock a ceiling even if you don't have the passing game role. Let's move on to the wide receivers in the top. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of kind of wide openness at the wide receiver position this year in terms of the rankings, but at least for CBS Sports, our top ranked prospect, Quentin Johnston from TCU. What's a comp for him?
He reminds me a lot of Torrey Smith, who played with the Baltimore Ravens and other teams, but I feel like because he's not the best hands catcher in terms of going up and taking it out the air with his hands, he's more of a cradler. I see him more as a, hey, catch and run guy or go deep down the field and then track it over your shoulder type guy, as opposed to your standard, hey, he's our go-to target in the passing game. He's going to win the 50-50 balls. That's not really his game, but he's a catch and run guy. He has sprinter speed, and because of that, he reminds me so much of what Torrey Smith brought to the table as a pro.
And what about Boston College's Zay Flowers? What's the comp here?
I couldn't get away from comparing him to Tyreek Hill because he's explosive in all directions. He's dynamic with the football in his hands, and he's open a lot. If Boston College had any average quarterback, he would have had way more touchdowns, way more yards, because when you're watching the film, you're like, wow, this dude was open on that play, open on this play. They just didn't throw him the football. I think that's not going to be a problem in the NFL. Better quarterbacks get the ball out quickly. They find the open guy, and that's what I see from Flowers. Someone, when you see him with the ball in his hands, it's just so explosive, so dynamic. He's going to always be a big play threat, which is why I like him more to Tyreek Hill as opposed to Elijah Moore.
Okay. All right. That's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back next week with Emory on Tuesday. Talk more NFL draft preview. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. And make sure you check out Emory Hunt's football game plan draft guide, footballgameplan.com/2023 draft guide. He's got write-ups of every prospect you need to know about and a whole bunch more. So that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you next time.